Robert Plank Show, episode 345. Easy Small Business Systems. Organize, systematize, architect the business you want, and e-myth your way to a sellable business with David Barnett. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. We have a return guest today, and his name is Mr. David Barnett. And if you want to check out his first appearance, you can go to robertplank.com/108. But make sure that you don't go there right now. Make sure you wait until we're done talking here. So if you like what David has to say here, you might want to go back and check out earlier stuff. But David has been working with small businesses for over 20 years, and he helps people buy, sell, manage, plan, and finance their business all around the world. Now, David is the author of 6 books, and 3 of those have been Amazon bestsellers, and he has recently released a new special report to show people how they can borrow money from their business broker when purchasing a business. So, Mr. David, glad to be talking to you again.
Hey, Robert, thanks for having me on once again.
Super cool. So yeah, we talked last time about sort of like getting your business financed and how you can do some kind of like, fun sort of like ninja financial footwork to like, buy a business and sell a business and fun stuff like that. So, I mean, what do you have for us today?
Well, yeah, last time we talked about buying and selling businesses, and through my career as a business broker, one of the things that consistently came up was that I would meet people that would want to sell their business, but their business was not in a state that was very saleable, meaning that a lot of the things that happened in the business were sort of in the head of the owner. And so when you have a business that hasn't been properly organized, that isn't systematized with policies and procedures and workflows and everything kind of detailed and written down, the only person you can really sell it to is someone else just like you, just like the owner. So someone with the same experience. So if you think about, an auto repair business, let's say, and there's a mechanic who's been running it for 20 years and he's got 3 employees. Basically, without anything being written down and put on paper, the buyer for that business is going to be another auto mechanic with similar experience, similar knowledge, who's going to step in and be able to run it because he knows what the current owner knows. Okay. And when we have time, and this is what would work with a lot of my clients on, if they had a timeline or a horizon to sell their business, say they wanted to sell it in a year or two, what I would often say to them is, hey, let's start organizing this stuff. Let's get yourself in order with policies, procedures, org charts, job descriptions, etc., so that anyone can walk in here, see how you do business, and see that they will be able to pick up and run the business just like a franchise would have, with an operating manual, that kind of thing. And so, have you ever heard of the book E-Myth by Michael Gerber?
Oh yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So in E-Myth, basically, Gerber describes this, how you have to create systems and things. And he tells us what we need to do. But for a lot of different people, a lot of personality types, they can read that book and understand that they need to do it. But when they think about the task of actually doing all that stuff, it seems monumental. And so they never get started, they never get it done. And what I realized in my career as a business broker, and then later afterwards just working as a consultant with buyers and sellers, is that I could take that mission or that job of systematizing a business, and I could actually create a system for that. And so what I've been working on and what I've just released recently is the what I call the 12+1 system of how to completely systematize your business. And basically, I've been working with clients for a couple of years on it, and it came out as a workshop last fall. It's been getting rave reviews as a live workshop, and it was recently released as an online course. I call it Build a Business that people will want to buy. Because, and what I find is that when people go through this process, a lot of them who are burnt out and tired and want to sell their business, they learn that by going through this process, they actually end up with a business that's easier to manage, is more profitable, and some of them actually back up from the idea of selling because they realize that they can actually have a much better work-life balance now that they have things under control.
And that's super awesome. So a system to systematize your business to basically make it either if you're going to sell it soon or sometime in the future, to make it sort of more turnkey, sort of make it more attractive to people so it sells faster, sells for more. And then that's really cool that some people were actually looking to get out of the business, but once they sort of went back and cleaned things up, then they didn't want to get out of it. So this sounds super exciting. And so is this report out? Is there a place where people can sort of go and pick up the report while they're following along, listening to us talking here?
Yeah, the build a business that people will want to buy is at easysmallbizsystems.com. That's easysmallbiz, systems.com. And basically, there's videos there, all the worksheets, all the workbooks, etc. And people who want to can hire me to do regular meetings to work with them through the process. But I lay it all out there. There's no secrets left behind. It's basically I learned that if it needed to be easy and it needed to be painless, and people had to be able to see big results for the efforts that they put in order for people to want to go through the whole thing. And so that's what I've done. So, for example, step one is simply to describe your own life in 10 years. How many hours are you going to be working? How much income are you going to have from your business? Where will you go on vacation? What's your house going to be like? Because we need to know where you want to be as a business owner in order to then say, this is the kind of business we have to create in order to support that lifestyle. And so then step two is about sketching out what that business is going to look like. So as I was going through the process over the last couple of years with people to sell, what started to happen is people who had bought businesses or had gotten businesses started on their own were complaining about some of the same problems. And I said, look, let's just take this same process and apply it to you. And so basically it makes the business better. It makes the business more easy to manage. It makes it more profitable. And it shows people where the problems are. So I've got one client that I'm working with every month to move through the 12 plus 1 steps. And basically he's on step 4 and he's already identified huge problems in his business that he didn't know existed. So he's making some changes to make his business better. And so that's why I say it's got to be easy, it's got to be simple, and it's got to be useful. People have to see that they're making great strides in advancing themselves. It's so many small business people, they think of their business as an extension of themselves. And what I try to teach people consistently, Robert, is that the business is an asset. It's like a money machine. And you have to treat it like a thing outside of yourself, and you have to look at it objectively. It has to produce money to flow into your pocket. And by keeping the asset in a condition or state where it's always saleable, then it becomes easier for you to manage. It's easier for you to look at it objectively, what's going on in the business, and easier for you to make decisions about, if I want to keep it, if I want to sell it, or if it's performing poorly and you can't figure out how to fix it, to kill it sooner rather than later. Because the people who have the worst stories about business failure are the ones who didn't know that their business was failing until it was too late and it started to really drain all of their resources and themselves personally.
So is there a reason why people sort of get stuck in this position in the first place? Is it like a matter of like not really having like the business training, or like the ego, or caught up in a day to day? Like, why do people kind of get in this sort of place where they're stuck without a system in the first place?
From what I see is people get into business. The biggest group of people that get into business for themselves are people who need an income. So they have a job they don't like, or they get let go from a job, let's say. They need to have an income to support their family. So they work on their business to try to create a business, and they go out and looking for customers and things. And then once things start to work at the level where they're taking a salary, then they somehow move from the mindset of the entrepreneur building something into a person who works there. Okay. So that whole working on your business and instead of working in your business expression we hear often over and over again. This is what really happens. So business owners go to work. They're busy because they have responsibilities, maybe serving customers or managing frontline employees. And they're so busy making sure everything gets done and the product is delivered and the orders are made, et cetera, that they don't invest the time in making sure that they're working on their business, keeping an eye on direction, goal, et cetera, where they want to go and how they're going to grow next, and what the next steps are. And I've seen some people get stuck in this place for decades where nothing really changes in the business. And that's not where you want to be. These are also the people that can't get away for more than a week of vacation a year, because so much is dependent on them being present in the business to make decisions and all this kind of thing. When you go through a process of systematization, not only are you delegating tasks, things that have to be done to different people, but you can actually delegate responsibilities. And once you delegate responsibilities, you can create accountability cycles. So you, instead of just saying to someone, hey, go pick up some of these product that we need to have on the shelf, you can say, you are now responsible for this inventory of these items. And if we ever run out, it's on you. And now you remove some of the things that are occupying the bandwidth of the owner's mind. You can start to offload things, and it all has to do with creating a proper org chart and then delegating those tasks and responsibilities. It's what I find is the difference between what Gerber said was the entrepreneur versus the technician. So the person who knows how to do something, so they start a business, versus someone who's actually the architect of a business building a machine to make them money.
Awesome. It makes a lot of sense, and I can relate to a lot of that. And I've sort of I've seen people do this, and I've sometimes had stages in my life where I could tell I was kind of getting off in this direction of, well, like you said, the whole point of making a business is to kind of get that freedom and have that variety. And it's really easy to get sort of have that tunnel vision and not really have a plan, and just be kind of dragging along to the next month or so, and the next thing you
Hmm.
know, like, you can't take a vacation. Next thing you know, every day's the same. It's like you've built yourself another job, but even worse, now you've built yourself a job that you can't even quit, and that sounds like a really scary place to be. And I like that you go back to like the sort of E-Myth way of thinking of like, okay, well, when we started, we were being more of an entrepreneur, and then as kind of time went on, it became easier and easier, and there were all kinds of all these little excuses that added up to a lot that made it just really comfortable to fall back into that technician kind of worker mindset. And then this is really making a lot of sense, because you started off by saying, okay, well, the first step here is to look at what your life looks like in 10 years. That way you kind of stay on course. That way you don't kind of drift like a lot of people do. And then step
Hmm.
two is to sketch what the business would look like. And so moving forward along in the steps, I mean, what do people need to do kind of to make a change here?
Well, it's funny because the reason why I call it a 12 plus one step program is because originally it was just a 12-step program. Just like, there are many 12-step programs out there. I thought it was catchy that it worked out to be 12 steps. But people were getting partway through and then kind of falling off the rails, right? They were getting halfway through and then they would lose their energy and they say, now I've done enough. I can see where the value is, but they weren't finishing to really get the complete. What basically I coach people through creating this tool, and once the tool is built, it's fully flexible. It's a living document. It's an Excel spreadsheet that allows them to completely manage everything going on in their business and show quickly and easily any new person that comes in exactly what that person is going to be doing. Or if they're going to be selling a business, it shows that new owner exactly how everything fits together. And people were getting partway through and then kind of falling off the rails. So that's when I added the first step. you know, Back in my old business to business sales training, we were taught to always think about, what's in it for me. So what's in it for the person? And when I started to add that first step of sketching out your life the way it's going to be in 10 years, what I could then do is say to people when they got halfway through, when they said, I don't want to continue anymore, I've gotten enough value out of this, I don't need to finish it, I can say, well, that's great, as long as you don't mind in 10 years having exactly the same life you have today. Because unless you finish this project, you're never going to be able to get yourself from here to there. And so by making step number one the plan of where they want to go, that also becomes the carrot or the motivation to actually finish the project. Because if you can't create a roadmap to where you want to go, like if you're in Las Vegas and you say, I want to go to New York City, it's very easy to find a way to New York City once you know that's where you're going. But if you're in Las Vegas and you don't know where you want to go, in 10 years, you're probably going to find yourself somewhere in Nevada, right?
Right,
You may
scary
not be in
place to
Las
be.
Vegas, but you're going to be probably pretty close, right? Because you got no direction.
Right, right. I mean, I can definitely relate to that. That if you want to keep having the same results in 10 years, well, then keep doing the same thing. If you want to change, then make
Yeah.
a change. And so, I mean, what are these remaining steps? Is there a way for you to kind of walk us through, like, not really getting too deep into it, but is there a way to kind of walk us through, like the big picture, like what this is all like leading towards?
Yeah. So basically, in the beginning, what we do is we sketch out the org chart of what the business is going to look like in the future that supports the owner's lifestyle requirements. And then we have to label all the different roles. And then what we do is we simply create a list of all of the tasks being done in the business today. And then we associate those tasks with the roles in the future. Okay. And then we find out which roles have no tasks. Because one of the things that holds back organizations is that they don't actually know what they're not doing. When you engage, say, an HR professional to come into a business, they might help you with job descriptions. And what they're doing is they're formalizing what exists today. I don't want to do that. I want to highlight what is missing today. So I'll give you an example. One of my clients, they were a big sign business. They created their org chart for 10 years down the road when they were going to have 3 times the revenue. That was their target. And they had a position on their org chart that says vice president of sales. And when they were done assigning all the tasks that happen today in their business, that VP of sales guy had nothing. There were no tasks assigned to that role. And I said, okay, imagine a business that's 3 to 5 times bigger than yours that has a VP of sales. What would they be doing? You know, well, they would probably be doing sales forecasting and budgeting. They would probably be attending like industry golf tournaments. They would probably be going to trade shows. They would probably spend time building relationships with suppliers. They would probably do extra little things to take care of our biggest customers, right? So then we start to imagine what are the missing tasks in this business that belong to these roles that don't exist. And what we find is that we've now able to identify the things that are not being done that are probably causing the stagnation. If we had somebody responsible for those things that knew that they were supposed to be doing them, we could start to move this machine forward again. So then we assign those newly created tasks to existing roles, and then we simply take all the people that exist today in the business and we assign them to the roles, even though some of them are going to be in more than one box. And now what we have is a complete job description of all the people in the organization and everything they're responsible for. Even if some of those people can only devote a few hours a week to one of those roles, we at least now can hold someone accountable to making sure that stuff is being looked at where it was never being looked at before. We then approach the workflow. So then we look at all of the things the business does from start to finish that lead to revenue coming in the door, and we associate those tasks to the workflow so that anyone who comes in is going to be able to see all the different roles in the company. They're going to be able to see all the different tasks assigned to all the different roles. They're going to be able to see how the tasks line up in the work order from start to finish. And then there's a few more steps after that that have to do with policies, procedures, and work tools, et cetera, and review. But essentially, it's step by step. Everything is very easy. We also create standards and purpose for all the different tasks. It's interesting. You can have an organization where you can say Sally's in charge of receivables, but what does that mean, right? And so if receivables grow too large, someone might say, hey, Sally, you're not doing a good enough job collecting receivables. So then maybe, she makes some calls and some money comes in. But in my tool, what I encourage people to do is actually create a standard that can be measured. So maybe what it says is the receivables clerk's job is to, number one, issue the invoices. One day after invoices are issued, they're to phone the client and ensure that the invoice was received. 10 days after, she makes another call to remind them that it's due at the end of the month. On the 25th day after the invoice, she calls them to remind them it's due in 5 days. And on the 31st day after invoice, she calls to remind them it's past due, right? So now we have a very specific schedule of what the receivables clerk is supposed to be doing that we can hold her accountable to. And then next to that in the purpose box, it says the purpose of doing this role is to make sure that cash flows into the business. If customers don't pay on time, it can cause a cash crisis in the business, which can lead to a problem being able to pay the business's bills, even meeting employee payroll. So now we've empowered that person who has the accounts receivable role, not only to tell them exactly how we expect the job to be done, but why it is so critical that this job is done correctly. because if it's not done correctly, it can threaten the organization and even threaten the ability to make payroll, right? And so in a lot of organizations, we have fairly menial jobs, and it's difficult for people to get excited about these menial jobs. I had another client who's in the trucking business, and then one of their roles is parts clerk, and sorting through spark plugs and bolts and things like this on shelves is not all that exciting. But when we identified just what the costs of the organization was if this job wasn't done properly, if a part was misplaced and the mechanic couldn't find it, we were able to show, hey, this can lead to losses of as much as a few $1,000s a day. And if the equipment can't operate and we lose a customer, it might mean $100,000 a year. And so now knowing where every part is and being able to find it quickly and get it efficiently is suddenly a purposeful, important project. It's an important role. And now that person is able to take pride in their work and see where they fit into the overall organization. So that's the kind of stuff that this project will create for an entrepreneur, is let everyone know what they're supposed to be doing. It will highlight the things that are currently not being done in the organization that need to be done in order for success to occur. And it creates the blueprint for growth. So once we know where the bottlenecks are and we're able to secure some more customers and grow sales, we can quickly hire new people and just put their names in the right boxes and then just hand them their job descriptions. And so the onboarding time is shortened. The efficiency of measuring people is shortened. Most small businesses don't do employee reviews. Well, with this tool built, it's very easy to quickly print off a list of all the tasks and responsibilities that each role has. And then you can sit down with the employee and review them and find out where they're struggling and where they're doing well. So it solves a ton of problems. And that's why everyone who's gone through this, they really appreciate it, because they know that none of their competition likely have it. And it's why some of the people who were so burnt out and tired and fed up that they wanted to sell actually get a second win. And they realize, hey, I have an opportunity here to really do something with this now that I've got a handle on everything that's going on here.
Super cool, and there's so much good stuff in there because I mean, like I really like the idea of the E-Myth, and I read it like years and years ago, but like it still sticks in my head probably once or twice a week, and I'm always sort of thinking about how I can remove myself from the business, or like hire someone to completely take over our customer help desk, or hire someone to just have a job to make sure that all of our servers are up and running. That way it's a thing that
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to check. And so I really like how you've kind of taken some of this E-Myth stuff, which on its own is great, but like the E-Myth kind of gave me some ideas, but didn't really give me much to kind of dig into to unpack. I was kind of left on my own, and it sounds like a lot of this has kind of beefed up or kind of filled in the blanks of a lot of this the stuff that the E-Myth tells us, as far as like to, have like checklists, and to have job titles for people to match those up. And I like how there's like that part of it where you said, well, here's the purpose, here's why
Yeah.
this is significant to the business, and that way the current owner knows why that's important, the new owner, if you're selling, knows why that's important, the employee kind of feels valued. Lots of good stuff in there. And then how I keep hearing a lot of like, well, future sort of like building towards the future, right? And like thinking towards the future and thinking about like, well, here's what this job is going to do, because like a lot of that whole E-Myth stuff of like taking kind of making sense of the task that we're doing sort of seems like a painful process, right? It seems like, well, right
Mm-hmm.
now I'm not putting, like, if I'm not putting a lot of money back into the business, but putting a lot of time into the business, and I want to kind of transition, it sounds like, well, there's that sort of middle area where I'm kind of putting in time and money and kind of a hump to get through. But by looking towards the future, it's more exciting. And like you were saying that some people kind of do a couple at first, did a couple of steps and then stopped. And so by sort of knowing what's ahead, sort of gives the motivation to keep going. Is that about right?
Yeah, yeah, and I like how you said it about when you read E-Myth, because I really do think that Gerber told us a lot of where we wanted to be, but there was no step-by-step roadmap of exactly how to do it in an operating business. And so a lot of people read that book and they get excited, and then they go, yeah, I need to do this. And then when they start looking at the task of documenting everything, they go, oh my God, it's so much work. And then it never gets done, right? Because people have those long, hard work days. And at the end of the day, they're like, wow, I worked hard today. I deserve to go home and play with my kids, or sit outside and have a beer, or go out on my boat, right? And so that's why when I was looking at this process, I realized because I'd even given away copies of eMyth to business owners and said, do this. And of course, they didn't even read the book, right? And when I realized, hey, I need to break this down so it's so easy and simple that people will agree to do it, that's when people started to move forward, and that's when we started to have great results.
Cool. So when people go to easysmallbizsystems.com and they get this report, is there anything people need to know going in? And I ask that because, like, sometimes when I go in and I go and like read a book or I implement something, there's always sort of like either like a difficult part or there's like just like, preconceived notions and things I need to let go of. So is there anything like that? Like, do people, is there like a trick for maybe people to get over that sort of idea of having like the overhead and the additional cost, or like to trust others, or anything like that that people should know going into getting the support and implementing it?
Yeah, well, at easysmallbizsystems.com, it's more of an online course. There's about 3 hours of video tutorials and the workbook and all of the spreadsheets and tools and examples that I use in the presentation are all included there as well that people can tear apart and use for themselves. And are there any preconceived notions? Yeah, I think that what I run into a lot of is people somehow think that their business is different, that their business is somehow different from all the other businesses out there. And when you realize that a business is nothing more than three things working together: capital, people, and a place. Three things work together, whether it's a virtual place or a real place in the world. People do things with tools, inventory, etc. That's the capital. And by doing those things, they produce a cash flow. And everything can be broken down into a series of steps and tasks and responsibilities. Um, yeah, it's like I said, it's really easy. And if anyone's struggling in their business and they want to make it better and easier to manage, this is the first step that I always recommend to everyone.
Awesome stuff. So your business, I mean, they're as far as the capital, people in place, like every business has that, and then within that
Mm-hmm.
you might sort of be different. But as far as that overall structure and like the people and the workflow and all that, like every business has that. And if your business doesn't have that, then you're really in trouble. So you need to go to easysmallbizsystems.com and get the support, get the videos. That way you know what to do, and that way you can kind of get that freedom that you always wanted and get your life back on track. Because one of the scariest things that I can think of is to look forward 10 years, 20 years, and be in exactly the same place. No one wants that, but what people do want is that freedom and that variety and that sort of flexibility to be able to make those decisions. And like you said, Mr. David, a lot of people don't know their business is in trouble until it's too late, until things get to sort of that breaking point where, well, geez, if they had kind of done some more proactive thinking and set some of these things up ahead of time, they could have either made those decisions earlier and cut the business loose before things got really bad, or turned the business around, or completely avoided any kind of problem entirely. So this is a really important thing, and everyone should go to easysmallbizsystems.com. And are there any other websites or places people should go, or is that the one place to be?
No, well, that's for that program. But you had mentioned at the beginning of the show, I do have a new special report out about how to borrow money from business brokers when you buy a business. That's just been released, 1st of July, and they can go to my blog site, davidcbarnett.com, and they can get a copy of that. Also at davidcbarnett.com, Robert, literally hundreds of blog posts. I think I have over 200 videos now on buying, selling, managing, financing small and medium-sized businesses. There's just a ton of information there and links to my other websites that deal specifically with buying or selling businesses. But yeah, no, it's if someone has a business or they're interested in deal making, come on over to davidcbarnett.com. It's a wealth of information, and I'd love to have your listeners come over and check it out.
Awesome. I'd love for them to check it out too. So, David Barnett is the guy to listen to when it comes to buying or selling your business. So, make sure to go to davidcbarnett.com. That's davidcbarnett.com. That's with two T's. So, davidcbarnett.com to check out that blog and check out those 200 plus videos. And then, of course, we've mentioned a few times, easysmallbizsystems.com. So, lots of great stuff, lots of great things for me and for listeners to think about. And I want to thank you so much, Mr. David, for stopping by and share what you had to share today about buying and selling some businesses.
Hey, thanks, Robert. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on again.
Have you had a chance to rate and review the show yet? If not, go right now to robertplank.com/iTunes, click the View in iTunes button, and click the Ratings tab. We would really appreciate a 5-star rating or whatever you think is fair, plus a quick 1 sentence review to tell us how we're doing. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.